Hi everybody, welcome to yet another video. This one is on the little Devilbiss Demi11. So I say little because it's quite a small gun this, which is why I've done this little intro to the video. That's the Demi11, that's an LPH80 and you can see they're about the same size. Put that there like that. You can see they're about the same size. That's obviously a top cup. The one I'm talking about, the Demi11, is actually a little side cup gun. So we're going to have a look at the video and see what it sprays like, see what this little thing's like. It comes from Japan, which we'll explain in the video anyway. But yeah, no, it's not a bad little gun. Let's go and have a look. So as you saw in the intro, this is quite a small gun, but it does pack a reasonable punch. I find it's probably a bit faster than the LPH80 you also saw at the start. But there was a method to actually get in there. Now they make these in a few different versions. They make a DL8 cap, which is what this one is, and as far as I know they make a DL6, which is for the smaller. They do some smaller sizes as well, but the DL8 is for the 1.1, and as far as I know they do a 0.8 tip with the DL8 cap as well. But they also do I think it's called a DLR or a DR cap, and it's a round pattern. So this is the standard traditional sort of tulip pattern, but as I say, they do make a round version as well. So if you're going to buy one of these, then make sure you get the version obviously you want. I got this from Painting Tools Japan. I will say that at the start, and I'll put a link in the description. I do buy it, I do pay for it, so you know, I mention him because he gives me good service, and it's not everywhere you can get these things from, especially if you're in the UK as I am. So as I say, it's 1.1, this particular one, and this is a classic case of not adhering to manufacturer's instructions. With most spray guns, you'll often hear me say a good place to start, if you're unsure or you're not sure of a new gun or whatever, good place to start is to, I mean, it's easy to Google something, isn't it? You just have a look, put in the actual machine, the spray gun you want, and you can often get a good PDF that will give you quite a lot of information from the manufacturer. And I did a similar thing with the this little Demi11, because you know I didn't know what pressure to use it at, and I thought, well, I'll have a look, see what the manufacturer recommends, and I'll start there and I can play around. So as I say, this is a classic case of not believing what they say. Now this is clear coat and base coat. The base coat you can see at the moment, which is a Yamaha red, but the base coat went on really well at 1.0 bar, which is what is recommended for this particular cap, DL8. Is what's recommended. Now I'm wondering whether they've actually made a mistake with the pressures they give, because you can often get away with lower pressures with base coat. In fact, it's beneficial often, lower pressures with base coat, and you can still get a good finish and a good even pattern. But when we come later on to the clear coat, you'll see that I had to use a lot more pressure. What I did was I did one at the recommended pressure, the first coat at the recommended pressure, and then bumped the pressure up on the second coat, and we saved the day with the second coat. But I really wasn't happy with it with the first coat, but we'll get talking about that when we get a bit further down the line, when we actually get to the clear coat, because we're still doing the base coat at the moment. So the temperature was 9.4 degrees Celsius. So what's that? It's about 50 Fahrenheit. So it's quite chilly. So I was using a lamp in between. In fact, it was done quite recently, this one. So you know, it's not particularly warm. So you normally can't put lots and lots of material on. And these sort of guns, unless you're being more or less static, or you're not following the correct pattern, and by that I mean going over the surface same area time and time again, then you'll find it difficult to get too much material on, to get runs and things like that. So they're always going to be relatively slow for anything you're doing, but one of the good points of them is you get a lot of precision with them because they're quite small. This tank takes about 250 millilitres of base coat just to do the top. We're not doing the underneath as such, but to do the top, and then about 240 millilitres of clear coat. So it's about the same as a reasonable sized panel on a car, you know, a door on a car or something like that. Obviously it depends on the size of the car, but you know, roughly around about a complete panel on a car. So there's a reasonable amount of fluid needed to cover such an area, and these little guns can actually do it. They're just a bit slower, that's all. But what I like about this gun is the side cut, and I often get on Instagram, we are on Instagram by the way, and also on Facebook, but on Instagram I'll get a lot of people contacting me. If you go to on my Instagram feed, you'll see that I got this gun about 5 months ago, something like that. I like to have them a little while because I like to, you know, give you a bit more information about using them, rather than just, you know, have them for a week or whatever, try and using them. So when I actually started using it, my initial thought was that for the base coat it was quite impressive because it's quite a small pattern, and again, as I said, if you've got these small guns you can't expect anything more. But it coped with something like this reasonably well. You know, obviously it's going to take you some time, but it coped with it reasonably well. But as I said, I like the side cup guns because I like the ability to be able to move that side cup around. You know, it makes it something like this. It's absolutely fine. But if you're doing things like wheels or any kind of frame, sometimes I've sprayed frames for people which are they're just angle iron, effectively welded and cleaned up, and then you spray them to, you know, give them some protection against weather. And sometimes you need to like put the gun upside down, etc., to get in these places because you can't have access to everything on some of these frames. And these little guns are absolutely perfect for it because they give you a reasonably small pattern, so you're not wasting loads of material. And that's another thing I found about this. It used about 25% less material than most other guns would on a tank of this size. So it does seem to save the material. But you know, as I say, I was using for base coat, I was using it literally at 1 bar, so maybe that's the reason. Because a spray gun actually, it doesn't push the fluid out, it draws it out, so the pressure created by the cap pulls the fluid through. It doesn't push it through, it pulls it through. So normally the more pressure you've got going through a cap, the more fluid it will pull through. But you have to be careful, because if you pull too much fluid through, you can get more fluid at the top and the bottom of the pattern. You end up with a drier centre. So it's always, that's why I spend a reasonable amount of time doing some pattern videos, and a lot of people will, you know, see pattern videos that I do, because the pattern is quite important. Because if you can get a good even pattern, you can then start turning up your pressure, and if you can keep that pattern, then you will still get normally good coverage. You can go too far in that you can keep the pattern and you start to notice, particularly with base coat, it going on dry, because it's effectively, and this will happen particularly if it's warm, it's effectively drying the base coat out before it has a chance to get on the on whatever you're painting. So yeah, you know, you have to be careful with the pressures, but you can play with the pressures as much as you want, really, and the pattern will often dictate whether you'll get away with that pressure. Because if you go too low on the pressure, then you'll also get a wet pattern without it being fully atomized, and you'll notice that in that it will come out lumpy is the wrong word, but it will come out patchy. So a good place to start, as I say, is with the manufacturer's recommendations, and on this gun it was 1 bar, and I think they've probably made a mistake on some of their literature, and you do get mistakes made on literature. I found that with ANI they've had some mistakes on some of their literature. You know, I've got a leaflet on the ANI 200 and it's giving you certain information, and they've actually got it the wrong way round, and then you see a later leaflet and they've obviously amended it. Now you'll see me using a microwave here just to put a bit of heat in the clear coat. Now I don't recommend that because it's probably really not the thing to do. It's just what I do, but as I say, I'm not recommending it for 1 minute, so I would say don't do it, but it is what I do, and it seems to work fine for what I do. I had somebody say to me the other day when I mentioned it, please don't put your clear coat in the microwave because all sorts of things can happen, and I'm sure they can, but that's why I'm saying to you, don't actually do it. But you know, it works for me, and it's what I do. And what you'll find is that by making that clear coat warmer, it will actually flow out much better. So anyway, we're coming to the clear coat stage now, and this is what I was saying about what I try and do, what I tried to do with this. I'd already used this gun a couple of times and realised that it just wasn't working right at 1 bar or just over 1 bar. I was trying it. So you'll see the first coat. Now hopefully you'll see as best you can the way the clear coat was going on with this gun, because it was going on what I was saying just now, actually it was going on patchy, in that because it's not atomizing enough, you get some areas where there's more clear coat than others, because it's not a nice even spread. Now hopefully you can pick that up in the light. Now clear coat, when it goes on, normally it won't go on exactly as you see the finish, because it flows out afterwards, so don't expect to instantly put clear coat on and for it to look perfect, because it will flow out afterwards. But I immediately knew when I was doing this it didn't look right, and the information relayed back to the painter, the person who's painting, is quite important, because it's what we all gauge, the speed that we go on, the distance that we're using in this case as well, the pressure that we're using, etc, and it's how we gauge it. What you see happening is how you gauge what to do. So if it's too dry, you would slow up, maybe come a little bit closer, just to get a bit more material on. And I immediately knew this wasn't quite right, so I thought, well, next time I'm going to bump the pressure up, because I was convinced that's what it was just the pressure. So we bumped the pressure up, and I got it up to 2 bar without any problems at all. So it's up now to about 29 psi, and you'll see, obviously now, and you'll see at the finish as well, that this worked an absolute treat. So 1 bar for base, 2 bar for clear coat worked an absolute treat. You'd be able to go a bit higher with the base. The base is normally thinner in the clear coat, depends obviously what base you use and what clear coat you use, but because the clear coat is normally a bit thicker, you'll get away with a higher pressure without that separation I was talking about in the fan. So I pumped it up got it up to 2 bar. The fan, as you saw on the paper when I did the spray out, the fan stayed perfectly good, and the finish was absolutely great. So we managed to save from the first coat, which was pretty awful, to a really good finish without having to do anything to it. So there's no doubt, you know, if I was going to recommend settings, I would say start with 2 bar all the time, because it's just really good at 2 bar for clear coat anyway. So a cracking little gun. Once I got used to it, I was all set to think that it was truly awful, but it actually wasn't. It turned out to be a really nice gun. So if you like small guns and you don't mind a side cut, and as I say, Well, I think I was saying, but I never actually got to it, did I? On Instagram, people have said to me, you know, oh yeah, I really don't like the side cups. And when I've said, you know, what side cups ones have you had, they haven't actually had any side cup guns. And you know, I'm not trying to push side cup guns. I just actually quite like them, and I think they're actually more useful than a top cup gun, particularly doing things like motorcycle stuff and things that aren't sort of, you know, just a bonnet or the side of a car or whatever, because they allow you to move around and get to a lot more different angles by being able to move the cup around, bearing in mind they are gravity fed. So I think you'll agree there's a few nibs in this, but that's not the fault of the gun, it's just the fault of the conditions. Most of the time I can get some really good clean paint jobs, but this one didn't actually quite go like that for some reason. But a little bit of polishing, it's absolutely fine. But I think you'll agree it came out really, really nice. So it quite surprised me in the end of how good it is. So yeah, a really good gun, cracking finish. They're not particularly expensive. I think they're about 150, 160 GB pounds, depending where you are, what the exchange rate is, etc. But I think you'll agree, very good finish. All the finishes you always see here are off the gun. Nothing's ever done to them. It's pointless doing that, because the idea is of me telling you what the gun can do. It's pointless polishing something up and saying this is what it can do, because most things can do that afterwards once you've polished it. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do enjoy my ramblings, then think about maybe giving us a subscription. Just push us up a bit, the YouTube rankings, and when people look for the videos. Thanks as always guys, thanks for watching. Cheers, bye bye.